Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, thanks for joining us. On this episode, I sat down with Wezlynn Davis. She, like Ben Weber from our last podcast, is running for the 86th House District State Representative seat. So I had a great conversation with her about her time as currently still is, depending on when you're watching this, Jerome Township Trustee member. Her background here in the area, she grew up in Delaware. And some of her thoughts on being a state rep and what her involvement here in the local community has been. So great conversation there. I encourage you to stick around and watch that. Just in case you're new here, my name is Derek Schwinn. Been here since '93 in Marysville. Local real estate agent, business owner, and just all around community enthusiast. Love telling the story of our community with a glass half full perspective, talking about, again, the good stuff going on here in the community. So if you've got good stuff, love to have you join me and talk about that good stuff. And I've also taken those skills and those passions into a media and marketing business, Good Stuff Media Marketing Company, where I help businesses here locally with confidence, clarity, and connecting with their audience through media and marketing efforts. So if any of those things I can help you out with, love to have you. Love to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Coffee Hall, and KR Designs with our sign here. So two great sponsors. Appreciate their support. Go check them out. But until then, here's the episode. Wezlynn Davis, thanks for joining me on the podcast. It's always a good place to start. If you want to introduce yourself, or we can chat. This is the first time we're meeting, so
Yes.
whatever you'd like to dive into and talk about.
Well, thanks for having me. Again, Wezlynn Davis. I'm a current Jerome Township Trustee here in Union County, one of the fastest growing townships in the state of Ohio. And according to my fire chief, one of the fastest in the nation. But I am running for state representative, and this is my second go. I did run a last primary to lay some groundwork and did very well in that race. I very much enjoyed it. I'm back again.
Okay, so you're running the primaries right now, and then on to generals. So primary is spring,
Yes.
right? Okay, thank you. I'm not very detail oriented when it comes to these things, so it's good to have somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Ain't my first rodeo.
So was it last year, right?
Yes.
Was the first go? Awesome. So what did you learn from that?
You know, I learned a lot. There was a lot that helped me target my message in a better way. And what I really learned was I wanted to get my message out about my background and who I am. When you are running against an incumbent and up against that kind of money, you've really got to do a good job of getting people to know you. So that's what I'm doing differently this time, making sure that I'm getting out well in advance. Last time I only jumped in 3 months before the primary election. This time I'm out much sooner so that I can connect on a different level.
What do you find the best way to connect with folks?
You know, I connect with people at the doors, at events. I try to do face-to-face as much as possible.
Especially these days, I feel like that's what we need more than anything.
It is exactly what we need. You know, so many times, I feel like it's very often that you just connect through text messages and, phone calls are great, but I like to be with people. I love people. I'm a person. So the more I can be with someone,
Amen to that. Yeah, I always say, a picture's worth 1,000 words, video is 1,000,000. So that face-to-face body language and all of that is wonderful. All right, so who are you, I guess, as an individual?
Oh, sure.
Let's start there.
Yeah, so I am a mother of 2, a wife of 15 years, a small business owner. My husband and I are both entrepreneurs. But I grew up in a family of 6 kids, so I'm one of 6.
Wow.
Yeah, big family. I always thought I'd have more than 2 kids, but that's a lot of work too. And I love my children.
I'm with you. I always said, 3 sounded good, but when we got through 2, I thought, I'm okay.
Yeah, and it's perfect because you have a child for each hand. You know what I mean?
Yep. I always said if there was a third, at least there was always a triangle of relationships. If the kids don't get along,
Yes.
they don't get along. At least if the third's in there's some room for leeway, I guess. But anyway, so
if
one
I
of
could
6.
go backwards, though, I think I would have had more children. And I feel like these days, a lot of my friends are having more and more. And I love seeing that, actually. I grew up in a big family, and I love it. Really close to my siblings today. So in my last primary, my brother was with me the entire time. He drove me through the country. He was, together with me the whole time. And it's just really great to have siblings
family
like
support.
that. Yes.
Yeah. And so where was that? Where are you from?
I grew up in Delaware, the city of Delaware. And so originally, my mom, my older brother, and dad lived in Jerome, actually, where I'm a township trustee now. And unfortunately, my dad passed away at the age of 27 in a car
Oh,
accident.
wow.
Yeah, and uh, he was a drywaller by trade,
Huh?
and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So when that happened, we moved back to Delaware, and my grandparents had a Napa Auto Parts store.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and my grandpa had the two houses as rentals next door to Napa, and we lived in the house next to Napa after my dad
So
passed.
where was that? I'm trying
So
to picture.
Spring Street. So it's right where all the Ohio Wesleyan students
Okay.
walk. You know,
Oh, right there.
Yeah, right
Okay.
downtown Delaware.
Yeah, I mean, I'm half vaguely familiar with Delaware, but I can't picture all of it.
Yeah,
I used to go to
yeah.
Allen Creek boating and stuff, so I've been through it and
Yeah.
all the different things. Very cool.
So my grandparents had that business for 54 years. It actually closed, I think, 5 years ago. And my grandma ran the books and did all that
Mm-hmm.
into her 70s.
Oh, wow.
But I grew up in that store, and I like to tell the story because there were a lot of kids in my family after my mom got remarried and what have you. Um, I liked being with my grandparents because they were all mine, right? So I was in that Napa store all the time, and my grandpa would let me dust the shelves and give me
Do all those
quarters,
things.
and I'd go to the pop machine and whatever. But
I'm guessing a lot of lessons in that.
yes, and it was, when I was a little girl, my sister always played with baby dolls, which I love, and my daughter's actually a baby doll girl too. But I was making business cards at a very young age. And so my grandpa would do the funniest things. He would do things like tell me, well, I think he was hungry and he wanted me to make his lunch, right? So he would tell me, he liked my middle name, Elizabeth. He would call it Elizabeth's Eatery, but really I was just making his lunch and bringing it to him.
I mean,
but I had a restaurant, So that's
seems to
how I
work.
played when I was a kid. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a lot of lessons most aren't going to get out of that. And I mean, I heard somebody, it makes you think of a time, somebody's referring to homeschooling kids as it's not, the weird socially awkward kids at home. It's the kids that are living side by side with their parents, running businesses, learning how to live life and all of those things. So that's
Yeah.
what I think of when I hear stuff
It's
like
like
that.
an apprenticeship. And in addition to that, my grandpa helped me have a landscaping company, which was moving rocks around the flower beds of their front house. And he got me a foot reflexology chart once too. So you can imagine
So quite the
that
breadth
foot rubbing
of skills.
business. Yeah.
He wasn't a dummy.
No, he wasn't joking around. He always said to me, enough of this Mickey Mouse stuff. Let's build a business. Stuff like that.
Well, and then transitioning to now, it sounds like
Yeah.
you're doing something now, and you and your husband are both
Yes,
in that realm.
Yes, we both are business owners. So I did not go to college. I went to trade school and built a business in my trade of aesthetics. And that led me down another path. So I built a business, brick and mortar. That did very well. Once that was up and running in a well-oiled machine, I entered into consulting. And actually, it was kind of an organic thing. I didn't think I was doing it, but I was a graduate of one of the trade schools. They brought me on for development of a new curriculum for aesthetics and brought me on, did really well with that. And my role with them ended up being just a variety of things from admissions, recruitment to creating new training product lines for them. And then it organically moved into policy work, actually. And from there, that's what built my consulting business, where I have been a policy advocate for trade schools in my industry across Ohio. I think at the height of legislation downtown, I was representing about 15 trade schools throughout Ohio in 30 different counties.
Really?
Yes. So I've been down at the Statehouse, stomping the Statehouse, floors, getting things done since 2015.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a fan of the Mike Rowe and the similar, work and his
Yes, I
what's the
know.
scholarship program called? But
What was that show called? Micro. It was
so there's Dirty Jobs, and then
Dirty
he's got
Jobs.
Returning the Favor, and he's got all kinds of things since then. That just a lot of work in Like he's got scholarships for trade schools.
Right.
A lot of work there and all of the things, and just very similar.
And
path.
that's really the crux of my campaign too. I mean, for me, it's all about economic freedom,
Mhm.
and it's also about building an environment in Ohio where small businesses can thrive, where people's ideas can come alive. One of the things that I like to say that I'm really good at is making ideas come alive. I have skill for that. I wouldn't be a good entrepreneur if I couldn't do that. And I think that in Ohio, in order for, you see kids going in loading up on debt in schools, and then they get out and there's not a ton of gainful employment out there. You might be, knee deep, 100 grand in debt for some kind of degree that doesn't translate to a livable income.
Well, especially to service the debt that goes along with it.
Exactly. And in trade industries, I'm not saying don't go to college by no means, but that's not the pathway for every kid out there. And sometimes when you come from a household that is not affluent financially, you need options because although my grandparents did have a business, you ain't a millionaire when you own a Napa
Napa,
store.
yeah.
And those were my grandparents, lots of grandkids, but my parents raised 6 kids under a $50,000 income. And my stepdad was a finishing carpenter, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And on the side, she had a little pet sitting service that she did. And I'll never forget, I was 10 years old and I helped her pass out those flyers. And then over the years, she did it all through my teens. Got, $20 here or there to walk a dog. But that's how I grew up. And when you grow up like that, you don't necessarily go, yeah, my parents are going to help me. That I knew that it wasn't there to help me, pay these loans back. I had to figure out a way. Was I able to do that? And for me, it was the trade industry. And I think that in Ohio with these kids, we really got to do a better job with laying a groundwork for them early on in their education with creating purpose and pathways that don't just result in 4 more years and $100,000. And then, you're competing with everybody who already has that.
And has their masters and all the other stuff.
Yes.
So one of the best idea, I feel like this is half kind of joking, but I think the point still persists. I heard somebody say, let's say it's 100,000, 200,000, whatever, 6-figure maybe debt that you might get, or a cost for college. Especially if your parent's paying, let's say, and a parent says, hey, Johnny, I'm going to give you that 100 grand, go start a business. And if it fails and the kid worked on it every week for 4 years, I can see a kid learning more from that experience than college, and you'd spend the same amount of money.
Right.
So just the idea that there's enough education and experience of just going out and doing things. And like you're saying, finding that purpose and a path to get to the purpose and push the purpose.
Right. And I think that you see a lot of teenagers, young adults, just not finding themselves. And it's because, we spend all of these hours in school, and that groundwork, we're not laying it very well yet for, pathways and purpose and workforce development at an early age. So that's something I aim to really focus on. And, partnering with that, I believe that, we have a lot of businesses that leave Ohio because Ohio has so much red tape or because of our taxes here. And we have to make it friendlier you see Google coming in, Intel, all these mega corporations, they can come in and get a tax abatement. I, as a Jerome Township Trustee, have been really hard on tax abatements. I've pushed back on that in a major way. I'm tired of funding or subsidizing mega corporations. We need to lift up these small businesses and make it viable for young people with great ideas to do business here and not leave. That's huge. It's a priority, and too many people are leaving Ohio.
Well, and that's definitely happened as a graduate here, seeing all the people that left and went somewhere else, and then now coming back with the growth. Not as easy as it was back in 2005 after graduating high school. And yeah, definitely a lot of support that small businesses need as we grow. And I feel like it's kind of this internal struggle of the big and the small. We get today. I think it was today. I saw that Potbelly's is opening up somewhere in town at some point, and just all of the big chains that come in. And obviously, that's not an Intel, that's not a Google or Amazon, but it's still going to push out the mom and pop, restaurant in town, or at least going to drive a lot of competition there. And so, anyway, I'm
Right.
all for that other side of the page, if you will. And yeah, so good to hear.
Yes, I'm excited about it.
Most people, if you said, "What does a state rep do?"
Oh, yes. I have
Like-
my own opinion of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been downtown for 10 years doing policy work, testifying in front of the House and the Senate, and convincing legislators that despite what they hear from a lobbyist, what I'm saying is better, right? And I've seen some of the way that things go downtown. In my opinion of what a state rep does is, well, everybody knows that they're lawmakers, right? They're engaged in
I don't know
passing
about
bills.
everybody, but
Well, okay.
that's the base level. Yeah.
Yes, base level lawmaker. But what I intend to do and how I intend to handle this role is that I want to be very rooted in our community. You can get downtown and really get sucked into the lobbyist world
Yep.
and all of these big business conversations. That's going to happen with or without me. But what I feel that my role is to keep myself very grounded in our district so that I am taking the priorities of the people that put me in office here to Columbus, not bringing more Columbus into Union
We got enough of that.
and Marion County. Yes, we have enough of that. So that's, for me, just the basic foundational way that I intend to operate. But even more than that, you see things happening downtown and you're like, why can't this happen? Why can't we get this across the finish line? And it's, just not enough support, right? So that's where I feel like my skill set is a little different. And I'm not saying I'm gonna, hit a home run every single time. But I've spent 10 years downtown convincing legislators that my way is a better way than their way. And so far in those battles that I've been tasked with by my clients, at the time trade schools and some small businesses, okay, say they were my voters, if you will,
Mhm.
I have a 100% track record with them. And it was really hard because I was up against mega corporations with a whole lot of money. One time, they bought up every powerful lobbying firm downtown Columbus, and it was just me, and we didn't even have a lobbyist. I'm just going down there talking to legislators. And I still killed that bill, that bad for small business bill. Now, as it relates to a state rep position, I think that it is my goal that if my constituency says, Wezlynn, this is what we got to do, I can't just go and stand on the committee floor and say, here's my opinion of that. I have got to have the skill set to convince my colleagues to go along with me and really figure out a way to be persuasive, to change the hearts and minds of people that may not align with my way of thinking, and be an advocate in that capacity. And that doesn't happen very often. And that is something that I feel that I have a very strong skill set in, and I intend to use it.
Mm-hmm. This, being a real estate agent and sales, it's for me, it's always a challenging balance of, I don't want to be right for everybody.
Mhm.
And so just as much of it for me is okay. And so anyway, I heard somebody say, what's the right thing to do, all things considered? And the challenge of everybody coming together, because everybody's got their right way. And I mean, how many are there?
There's 99
I was
state
going to say, I
reps.
thought 99.
60 some Republicans, I believe. I don't know off
Yeah,
the top of my head the exact number.
Those were the numbers I was thinking. I couldn't remember specifically. But anyway, yes, that sounds like you definitely do have that skill set. And from what I've experienced so far, I think the ability also to be reasonable and work on the all things considered and come together. And, obviously I would support what you're saying, so I'm not disagreeing with that by
Yeah.
any means. But anyway, I always go off on tangents. I jokingly question what is the right level of the game, because people will get on about corruption and this and that and whatever, and like there's all these ways that the world works, but at the end of the day, there's got to be some working
Well,
together.
we know there's corruption, or we wouldn't have a former speaker sitting in prison for 22 years for that First Energy bribery scandal. And so it is something that is top of mind for everyone. You see it, and it happens, or else we wouldn't have politicians in jail. But where I feel like, what is the right level of getting something, how hard do you advocate? My favorite justice is Justice Scalia.
Okay.
And he always says gridlock can be good because it produces, well, it is good because it produces the best legislation possible. We're not always going to agree, but what I was saying earlier about persuading your colleague, a lot of that is things that you engage when there is gridlock. And how do you massage the language into something that is the best language possible for the people? You're not always going to get what you want, but you got to know how to work those negotiations so that you can be a great advocate for your people, and also be persuasive enough to come out on the other side with something
middle ground.
Middle ground.
Is that kind of what you're?
Well, it's just that that you're going to experience gridlock, and knowing how to do that and deal with that in a way that is respectful, but also gets you the best legislation possible is the goal. I mean, the House and Senate, we've seen that over the years. They clash because the Senate has a bigger district, so they probably have different priorities based on the fact that their district looks different than just a House district. But that's why gridlock happens downtown, and it's going to happen. But using those skills to persuade and bringing your colleagues along is something that I think I can bring to that.
Nice. Yeah. Like I said, just an interesting thing, because nothing gets done if there's only gridlock, if we don't play nice together to some level. But just an interesting thing at some point. Then you're into bribery and corruption and all this stuff. And so anyway, just I like principled questions like that. Where is the line, and what do we need to do to continue moving forward, and all things considered?
It is difficult down there for them, I'm sure. And, I know a lot of legislators are in it for the right reasons. And I'm not saying someone down there isn't there for the right reasons. It's just that I think that government has lost a lot of public trust.
I think culturally, I would generalize that to leadership.
Yes.
Obviously applies to what you're saying at it, but I would agree that it's culturally, I think we're at a place where leadership is struggling these days. So definitely, and I feel that there's kind of a resurgence of that, and like yourself, that hey, this isn't working. We need to do better.
And it's hard to run for public office. I mean, you got a lot of great people.
That's weird.
Oh, man. You got a lot of great people that would want to throw their hat in the ring, but how the laws around what somebody can say about you, that's pretty much carte blanche. I mean, anybody can say anything. And you put your name out there and your family out there, and it can be very, very difficult. So I can see why good people don't run for office.
I've always heard the joke, the best president wouldn't run.
Yeah, I can see why that would be. But I'm so lucky. I have a very supportive husband. My children have been introduced to politics at a very young age, because when I first started my businesses, I was pregnant with my son, who is now 13, when I opened the doors of my first business. And so they've grown up in small business, and they've grown up in the Statehouse watching me fight for small business. Mm-hmm. I would take them with me. I wanted them to see this is how a bill works. This is how we advocate for ourselves as citizens and small business owners. And my motto, not only for the clients that I represented, one time I brought in over 200 trade school owners and small business owners into a hearing. My grassroots level is just really, really strong. And not only would my clients hear me say this, but my children too, I would say, we do not rally in the streets. We take our seat at the table. And I taught my kids that very young, and they've grown up watching how you make change by respectfully taking your seat at the table. And so they're used to all the political events and all the political talk. And I will tell you, I think that my kids may know more about how government works than some adults.
I would say probably. Again, I've seen that with homeschooled kids. People that are
Yeah.
saying my kids are probably more intelligent when it comes to these things than most, and the 7-year-old that recites the Bill of Rights and that kind
Yes.
of stuff. And so that's fantastic. I mean,
And
that's
that said, we need to bring civics education back into our schools in a stronger fashion. Get rid of all of the
in a respected
social
fashion.
justice stuff and talk more about, if we want to talk about values, let's talk about kindness. Let's talk about advocacy on a level that works within the system where you can change things within the confines of, you know, writing bills and pass, things like that.
Yeah, I really
Um,
like that. Take a seat at the table.
yeah, it
Good
works.
image. Well, and just the all the things that I think about and that make a lot of sense for what you're saying and the situation that it applies to. So that's pretty cool.
And you see what's happening right now with property tax. For years, I think that our residents in all over the state of Ohio have been saying, we need relief. We need relief. And the legislature, and I see a lot of great legislators trying to get things done. We see it happening. We see the state house override a veto. A lot of them acknowledge it's not enough. But let's talk about what taking your seat at the table means. What's happening now is the residents of Ohio are saying, we're going to take the seat at the table by passing a constitutional amendment that abolishes property tax. And that is their way of taking a seat
Hmm.
at the table. But what does that do, right? What does it do? You'll watch, any firefighter, police officer, school teacher tell you, okay, if this happens, yeah, nobody wants to pay property tax. I don't want to pay property tax, but this defunds us, right? And so, me as a very conservative Republican, soon to be state legislator, what do I say to that? Well, I say that is because for years and years and years, our state legislature has not been able to figure it out. And so now the people are saying, we're going to make you figure it out. And so, in order to not defund our local government, which really means defund our firefighters, defund our police, defund our school systems, what it really means is you're going to have to cut the pork out of the state budget. You're going to have to get rid of the corporate welfare. You're going to have to do reform around everything in terms of, let's talk about the philanthropy that is in the budget. They're going to have to finally deal with that on a mass level, I would expect. And then you have to acknowledge what our auditors are saying. Our county auditors have come forward and said, here are 5 bullet points. This is a really great way to provide relief. It did not happen at the State House this go around. So the residents of Ohio are finally saying, we're going to take a seat at the table. And it may happen in a constitutional amendment.
Well, that's the best answer I've heard for that because that's all I've heard is cut it. Well, that's great, but if we don't have a solution, and that's not an answer, but it's a direction to the answer, and that's better than I've heard because I would agree.
Well, as a township trustee, hey, listen, I've read something and I thought it was the best analogy. You talk about income tax, your tax, first of all, I fully support eliminating income tax completely. I believe Americans should keep every single dollar of the fruits of their labor. Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm very clear on that. But we are taxed on income, even though we are on the way to eliminating it completely, which I believe will happen, especially under Vivek by 2030. But I read something that said you're taxed on the income that you actually make, right? But with property tax, you're not taxed on what you paid for your home. You're taxed on what you could sell it for. And that, I thought about that. And I'm like, that really, truly is unacceptable.
Well, and it's from a practical standpoint, if it's a size thing, if you have a huge house and fire comes, maybe it's going to cost a little more to fight the fire, but it's not like you have a fancier house that's worth more. You should pay more for your fire
Yeah,
support.
are we paying for an imaginary number that I actually didn't pay? So that I do have a problem with that. And at the local level, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and you can kind of attach farming to that.
Mm-hmm.
Farmers pay a disproportionate share. They're not using any more fire, school, library, or whatever sources come from there or go to that.
Yes. So I believe we need a total restructuring.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to see happen is right out of the gate, we go, okay, let's just defund local government completely. Why is our state legislature not fastening their seatbelts first, speaking with our county auditors across the state and working on it from a structural standpoint first? And again, I am very much in favor of not paying property tax, but we've got to do it without defunding our public safety and our schools.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I've said this a handful of times before. Do we want to pay for things? How do we pay for them? That's as simple as this argument is to me. It's what do we want? How are we going to pay for it? Because it's got to come from somewhere. And so, like you said, we got to address things. And if it's cutting this or that,
let's start with eliminating pet projects. Let's start there.
Low-hanging fruit, as they say. There can be those plenty of times.
Mm-hmm. Because, the state doesn't collect property tax, right? So, it really does come down to the local level. And, sitting as a Jerome Township Trustee with over 10,000 residents over there, if you go to every single house and we asked them, would you like no PSO officers and no firefighters in your neighborhood, what would they say?
So do you think, yes, I would totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think the solution is no property taxes?
I think
Or
massive restructuring of how it's handled needs to happen. And we need to be listening to our county auditors on relief. Number one, they have been ignored in this process. And we also need to look at our state budget, eliminate the pork, eliminate the pet projects, eliminate the handouts so that, someone brought this to me and I thought, that's a really good idea. What about levy buy downs from the state level? We can't do that if we don't have any money to do that. So that was something that was proposed that I thought was a pretty good idea. I don't claim to be an expert on property tax, but there are a lot of people that are experts. And if there's one thing I'm good at and I have a track record for is bringing the experts in the room and really hammering out powerful solutions that make sense. So, I think at the state level, we need to start looking at our own finances.
Mm-hmm. Restructuring. Yeah, I like that. Just heard some of the property tax conversation start as once you own your home, you should own your home, not pay for anything. Just like I'm using services, so I'm okay paying a little bit, but like you said, restructuring, I'm totally on.
And so our citizens may force us to do that by way of a constitutional amendment.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a weird position here. I'm not here to advocate for anything. I'm trying to have a conversation.
The way I see it, it's kind of like,
your 2 cents.
Hey, you haven't been able to figure it out, so we don't really know the answers, but we're going to make you figure it out because we're going to clip your wings over here.
We need to. Yeah. And I said, that's the best. I guess all I'm illustrating is I've even heard like DeSantis in Florida say, you should just own your home outright. Like, okay, well, we can't ignore the other half that we got.
People
services.
don't like potholes.
Yeah, like we got to do something somewhere. And again, do we want the service or whatever the thing is, and whether it's whatever it is, and how are we going to pay for it? Because the money's got to come from somewhere. It's not magic.
Yes.
That's all it is.
I think a state budget should, when we eliminate income tax and we continue to let people keep their own money, they will reinvest into our economy. And there is proof that when you lower taxes and you let people keep their money, and let is a ridiculous word, really, there should be no let. But what you see happen is state budgets, there's a surplus. It doesn't the budget doesn't decrease, it increases because people are like, yes, I have my own money. I'll use it how I want. They reinvest. And then what happens when that will have economic boom, that'll come in. And then by the end of it, we'll have a budget that could and should focus on the basics. We have school board candidates out there saying we need to focus on the basics. So should our legislators as it pertains to our state budget. And that means infrastructure, public safety, healthcare, Medicaid, our schools, those basic things, that's what our state budget should be focusing on. But there's so much more in that budget that is so outside of those basics. And that's why we're in a little bit of a mess today.
Yep. I always like to go back. Again, I'm not a sports person, but I forget the basketball coach that started his training with how to put your socks on. Did you ever hear that one?
No, tell me.
I forget his name. It was just an illustration. I believe it's a true story that there's a guy somewhere in the Western somewhere. He would start his training, like I think collegiate level, with how do you put your socks on? And it's kind of like the boot camp. You break them down. You start at the square root, the starting point.
Right.
And so you got to start with the basics before you can get to the extra is the point. And so
that is the point.
Just the illustration that you're teaching college kids how to put their socks on, but you start with the foundation so you make sure what matters, and then everything else can come. So anyway, yeah, I agree with that philosophy.
Thank you. I think that it would be my goal to advocate for that path. And I hope that God willing, our constituency puts me in that place. I'll do a really good job helping to bring along my colleagues downtown.
Well, I like it. Yeah, because I think there's, and I've talked about, last I heard a few years ago, $92,000 of a house being built, a new build, is regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that really impacts affordability, especially here in Marysville where things are growing so fast and property taxes have just skyrocketed because and which obviously I'm not going to complain too much. My value's gone up, but
sure,
increases with that and other capacities. But for those that are trying to, I've got family members that can't buy a house.
That's right.
Because of the situation. So anyway, it bleeds over in other things.
Yes, regulation only takes, and there's no return on investment there, in my opinion. It only makes everything cost more.
Goes.
As a small business owner, pushing back on government overreach has been something that is near and dear to my heart because you can't thrive with that constant
weights on.
Yes, that constant weight.
I get it. So since this is mostly a Marysville focused thing,
oh sure,
the thing I like to talk about the most is the growth. Because I've been here since '93, so I can remember watching the trees get taken down when Mill Valley was really getting started, and they were taking the farm down and different things like that. And I've talked to people that were here in 1937, and what the community was like then. And it's interesting to talk to people that say, well, it hasn't been a small town since the 2000s. Well, one says since the 80s and all this stuff. So anyway, I just always, again, a principled thing of what is, you hear the smart growth around, and
sure,
what is controlled, smart, managed, the right road. Like, what's your take on what we're experiencing here? Mostly Northwest Columbus, out this direction, but obviously Marysville.
Right. Well, I think that the growth is coming, and we do have a lot of pressure. But I am all about local control, and that is what is important to me. So here's the thing. We know it's just constitutional. There are property rights. So then how do you manage growth and then, understand that there's property rights? So for me, as someone that's had to face this as a Jerome Township trustee and a legislator, potentially, for me, it's all about local control. Okay. And so your community has to be empowered to make these decisions. And sometime in townships, it can be very restrictive. People think township trustees have more power than they do. But I believe that having this community engagement, having people who are serving in these roles that are really committed to maintaining local control is the only way that you can handle it. At the end of the day, comprehensive plans are important. They're just a guide, but communities have to get involved in zoning resolutions if they want change. So it's really difficult because that level of reading and understanding can be very, very hard. It's, who wants to sit down and read a book of zoning resolutions? But if you want to control your community, you have to be engaged in that. And so I think that Marysville has asserted themselves very much in that with referendum. And that's happened in Jerome Township too. And that is their right. So as far as having an opinion on growth, I think it's going to come. And the only way to manage it properly is, make sure if you are a resident that you are fully engaged in the process. Can I sit here and say, Mr. Farmer over here can't sell his land?
I was going to say, I was really hoping for an excellent solution to this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't override property rights, And so it's a very difficult thing. Now in Jerome Township, there's a lot that we've done through. Okay, so here's an example of something that I did recently. We were going through a comprehensive plan update. Okay. I saw by the end of it, it went through, thousands of comments, steering committees driven by community members. Then here I am sitting at my table in a public meeting at the end of the day going, are we going to pass this? Are we ready? And I'm looking at it and I see multiple parcels that are zoned residential. And I'm thinking, my God, more residential. But look where they're located. And in my opinion, it was still an improper use of land because it was so close to commercial property. Why would we continue to have these large parcels produce more houses when we could marry them into the commercial district, increase commercial tax revenue, which takes burden off our existing residents, and then in turn generating revenue that is infrastructure dollars for what you see is impacted down there. And so there were multiple parcels, and I'm sitting there in the 11th hour studying this going, wow, we missed an opportunity here, here, and here. Let's change it now. And that results in a lot less heads in schools and a lot less burden on our public services, fire, and what have you. And so that is a way on the local level that I was able to impact growth and still balance it out by driving commercial tax revenue, which takes the financial burden off our existing residents. So this is just an example of local control and how it can be powerful.
I love it. Yeah. So I'll pose the same question I posed to your opponent. In a principled standpoint, you have farmer that wants to develop commercial, residential, whatever it is, and you have the community. To me, I've been trying to think through a perspective of this that would apply to answering the question of smart growth, reasonable growth, whatever it is, because it's coming. There's no maybe a little bit of slowing it down, but it's controlled growth. And what is that really? So anyway, if one person has a property that they want to develop, and that's their personal property rights to do something, there is a line at which the community is going to stand up and say, we don't want a toxic waste facility next to us.
Yes.
And so both of those things are in conflict of, well, it's kind of, whatever you want to say about HOAs. And so just anyway, is that making any sense?
Yes.
At some point, the community has a right to speak up.
Oh, they always have a right to speak up. Now, I know that in the last General Assembly, a lot of community members were not happy that the referendum percentage, I think, went from 8% to 15%, which means that really increased the percentage, the amount of signatures that you need to referendum. And so that was not something that
not going in the right way
that the residents appreciated, and nor did the Ohio Township Association. It was really at 35%. It went from 8%, I believe, all the way to 35%. Yes. And then the Ohio Township Association, I was very heavily involved in talking that down to 15. It was a negotiation, really.
Wow.
Yes. So it was really intense. Now, I will tell you that most towns, villages, townships even have zoning resolutions that if you are near neighborhood, there's not going to be toxic waste next to you. You know what I mean? But you're talking about a data center, for instance. Yes.
A data center I go to, for me, a busier street is obnoxious to me. So everybody's got their line
Yes.
of, at what point does the community say, we're again, it kind of goes back to, what do we want? How are we doing it? And how do we, like you said, the skills of persuasion to get everybody on the same page
Yes.
of what that looks like. And I guess I'm just saying it's easy to say toxic waste, we don't want that, or a data center. But there's also a big faction of Marysville that I've talked to that don't want the growth in general. And so it's just an interesting thing for me to think about, of like, where's that meeting point in the middle ground that we can come to and say, we're doing it, but we're doing it right.
Well, I think that the Marysville folks that have pushed back on some of these things they've done a really good job. They've kind of remind me of what I had to do at the Statehouse. They had to rally together, they had to unify, and they had to make their voices known. And I think that it has created more of a conversation between council and the people, which is the right direction. And we have to be cognizant of that as locally elected people. You can't just bulldoze through. You have to listen and try and find that balance. And but the one thing that can be hard for the locally elected is that they can only vote no based on what their rules and regulations say.
And a lot of people miss that. Yep.
And a lot of people miss that. Or you can get your pantsuit off, which is what happened in Jerome Township before I took office, which resulted in developers having access to even more acreage with essentially free zoning. So it went the wrong direction, it's been hard. But, there are ways to change zoning resolutions so that it can be more in line with what your voters want. And it takes time and a lot of conversation. And I think that should be on top of mind for anybody locally elected.
Yeah, and I'm learning more about the visioning project going on with the city, and working towards finding more unification in what that common ground is, and that middle middle ground?
Right.
I said earlier, for that to happen, and then be able to actually everybody come to the table, as you said, and put the system together and kind of restructure things and move forward. I like it. That's a good answer.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So the one thing I don't know about politics, how do endorsements work?
You have to ask for them, and that's what I've been doing. One thing that I've learned early in business and being an entrepreneur, even in my policy work downtown, is it never hurts to ask, and you just got to go for it. And so I have the endorsement of our Ohio Treasurer, Robert Sprague. I have the endorsement of the surrogate spokeswoman from President Trump's campaign in Ohio, Mahek Cook. And I have the endorsement right now of our minority whip in the Senate, George Lang, who is the leader in economic freedom in our Senate, who really has been the one who has pushed forward the elimination of income tax. And I have he's been a mentor of mine since we met when he took his seat for the first time down at the Statehouse. And he was a township trustee formerly, and has been a mentor in my role to me, in my role as a Jerome Township trustee. Really helped me understand the importance of pushing back on corporate welfare, which I have done, and making sure that we are offsetting costs off of our residents and driving commercial tax revenue. He's a job creator. He's an incredible human. And so he has been very important to me in my role. And so those are 3 big endorsements that I have. I have many more coming, and I'm very excited. And if I'm back again, I will share them with you most definitely.
Sounds great. Yeah, sounds good.
And, what I'd like to leave with anyone who's watching is that I was elected into the role of a Jerome Township trustee, and I have fought for my residents. And I like to say that I was elected by people within that jurisdiction, and I have fought for them. And I have never wavered on the principles of serving them first, even when I've had outside pressures. I've not been elected by people outside of Jerome. But what I would like our residents to know in Union and even Marion County, if they are watching this podcast, is that in the way that I've served and have been unwavering in my dedication to the people that put me in office in Jerome, I will do that for our entire district and lead and serve with integrity in the same manner. And I'm very excited about it. And I'm humbled to have had the opportunity so far, and humbly ask for the votes of our
Doesn't
other
hurt to ask, right?
constituents. That doesn't hurt to ask for the votes of our other constituents throughout the district. So
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure chatting and getting to know you. Like I
it's
said,
been great to talk to you.
fun to put a personality and a person to the yard signs that I
The
saw 4
big
years ago
red
and
sign.
all
Yeah,
the things.
that's my red wave.
There you go. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Yeah, happy to have you back. It sounds like we've got a year and a half till D-Day?
It is a nope. It's a May primary. So
I guess.
yes, sooner. I know time flies when you're having fun. So May of 2026, and in our district, because we are a very red district, the race is the primary. So I look forward to celebrating with all my voters, and it'll be a great day.
Good deal. Well, good luck. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Good to get to know face behind the name that you see out in a political arena. So kind of a neat experience for me. Never really had that. Hopefully you found some value in there. If you did, please leave a comment down below or above, wherever you're watching this. Let me know what you enjoyed. Let me know what I could do better next time. Love to have you on. If you got some good stuff to talk about, come join me here in the podcast studio. Or if you just got something I should cover and talk about and some content moving forward, love to support that. Slowly getting people sending me more things. So I appreciate the efforts that you guys have to send me some information and keep me up to date. Really appreciate that. So if there's anything I can do for you, love to help you out. Until then, be kind, stay curious, stay local.